Welcome back to the second lecture in chapter 12. So now we're going to start right in back talking about fungi. So classification of fungi is in a state of flux because there are approximately 80,000 recognized species, but there are many more that have not been identified. And until we have them identified, it's hard to put organisms into specific groups. But there are four major groups that we do discuss. So we'll discuss Ascomycetes, Basidiomycetes, Zygomycetes, and Critiomycetes. So let's look at each of these a little closer. Ascomycetes are also known as your sac fungi. These include almost 75% of the known fungi. They can be unicellular or multicellular, and they form structures known as septate hyphae. Examples of your Ascomycetes would be penicillium, as well as the pathogen that causes Dutch elm disease. Other examples would be baker's yeast, Saccharomyces cerevisiae, and Aspergillus. Basidiomycetes then is club fungi, and these reproduce forming mushrooms. So these are terrestrial in general. Most fungi are terrestrial, so that's not surprising. They can be unicellular, but they also are multicellular. They also form septate hyphae, and this includes the mushrooms, smuts, and rusts. An example would be like your meadow mushrooms, and a pathogen would be Cryptococcus neoformans. Then we have Zygomycetes. Zygomycetes includes your black bread mold, which is known as Rhizopus. These are multicellular. They form hyphae, and the hyphae generally are not septate hyphae, okay, non-septate hyphae. And the example here would be your Rhizopus stolonifer, which is the black bread mold. The last group then is the Critiomycetes, which are typically called the chytrids. These are organisms that live in water in general, and they are also in general unicellular. They tend to be, they're not always, but they can be very parasitic. The example that I have here is Brachychytrium dendrobatidis, which is a fungus that infects frogs. And let me go to the next slide. There we go. Oh, no, wait. I lost my pen. I like to hold my pen when I talk. I don't know. It's like like a blankie. Some people have something else they hold in their hand. I hold my pen so that I can write if I want to. So let's look at the structure of fungi. Most fungi are multicellular, but they can be unicellular. And they're composed of hyphae. The visible mass of hyphae is termed mycelium, so that's what you actually see. But hyphae grow rapidly in directions of food. And oftentimes when they grow, they'll release enzymes that stop other hyphae from growing so that they get the food and other hyphae can't get the food. They have a high surface area to volume ratio because of the way they grow that allows them to get lots of nutrients when they need it. So most fungi live in terrestrial environments, but these terrestrial environments are in general moist. They have, some have specialized hyphae that allow them to grow into living organisms. So these would be your parasitic fungi. The structures are called Hoistria, and you can see here is a fungal hyphae, and they're growing into the cells. So that would be a parasitic type of fungi. Other specialized fungi have produce rhizoids. These are structures that are going to go inside of dead things. So still they're going into cell structures, but these are dead, and they allow them to hang on and eat the materials that are decaying. We have dimorphic fungi that are both single-celled and multicellular. An example for this would be Histoplasma capsulatum, which is a mold found in soil. Spores can be inhaled, and then it can cause histoplasmosis, which is not very common, but in immunocompromised individuals, it can become common. I mentioned that fungi are terrestrial, but they can be found in other environments as well. You can find fungi in thermal pools, in volcanic craters, even in high salt environments. They grow in salt and sugar. They can grow in colder temperatures, so they prefer room temperature, which is about 20 degrees Celsius, to body temperature, which is about 37 degrees Celsius is body temperature, right around body temperature. But they can survive in colder temperatures. In fact, this is what causes them to be so effective at spoiling our foods, because they grow in environments at 5 degrees Celsius and below to even freezing. Fungi tend to be aerobic, but they can be facultative anaerobes. So remember, an aerobic organism is an organism that needs oxygen. Facultative anaerobes use oxygen if it's available, but they can use or they can survive without oxygen if they have to. And some fungi are even obligate anaerobes, where they don't use any oxygen and they can't survive in the presence of oxygen. And then we have our symbiotic fungi. So symbiotic fungi are fungi that form mutualistic symbiosis with different organisms. The first example of a symbiotic fungi is a lichen. Lichens are associations of fungi with some photosynthesizer, typically algae or cyanobacteria. The fungi give protection and a place for the photosynthesizer to grow. And then the photosynthesizer provides the organic food for the fungi. The fungi also absorb more water so that they don't dehydrate. Then we have our mycorrhizes. Mycorrhizes are mutualistic symbiosis with fungi and plant roots. Fungi then can absorb water and nutrients for the plants. They're very effective at pulling in nutrients and water. They can help supply nitrogen and phosphorus to the plant as well. And then lastly, we have fungal gardens. Fungal gardens are really cool, and that's a picture of leaf-cutting ants that farm fungus. So leaf-cutting ants cannot eat the leaves that they are cutting apart. Those leaves actually would be would cause harm. They're poisonous to the plants. So what the insects do, those ants, farm fungi by getting all of these leaves, and then they put them into a fungal farm, and then the fungi eat the leaves, that's their food, and the material that they produce is what the plants eat. So it's an actual farm. So your insects are farming just like we farm and produce food for our families. Insects do the same, or ants do the same. Pretty cool, right? Lastly, let's look at how fungi are important to us both economically and medically. So, economically, fungi produce antimicrobial medicines like penicillin. But not only do they produce medicines, they're also used to produce other molecules that are used in the medical field, like insulin, and they help in the production of vaccines. We have fungi that are used in food services. Saccharomyces cerevisiae is brewer's yeast and baker's yeast. And so it is used in producing wines and beer as well as in bread. We have fungi that help in production of cheese. So fungi are really important. But they also can be very detrimental to the economy. So examples of detrimental, they spoil food. So I was talking about, where they like to live in that 20 to 35 degrees Celsius temperature, but they can grow at 5 degrees Celsius, at 4 degrees Celsius, even at 0 degrees Celsius, which means they're excellent at spoiling our foods. They can grow and cause a lot of plant infections. They can cause some animal infections, but they cause plant infections very often, and this can be very detrimental to not just the plants, but to humans, because we are growing these plants for different purposes, right? So they damage the environment by killing off the trees or killing off other plants that maybe we want to eat. And then that's cost that we are feeling in our own pockets, right? A type of fungi, water mold, which can be put into that same grouping. I like to just put my molds and fungi together. Caused the potato blight in the 1800s and, killed millions. Well, killed and took away homes of millions because people had to move just to find food. There are very few fungi that actually infect humans, but there are some that can be detrimental. So examples of fungi that cause problems to humans would be fungi that cause athlete's foot or jock itch. Same fungi produce both athlete's foot as well as jock itch. You can have some more serious fungal infections like cryptococcal meningitis. This causes, meningitis, so it's very serious. And then some fungi are going to be not problematic for individuals who have a good immune system, but immunocompromised individuals are going to be much more likely to become sick. And so an example of that would be histoplasmosis. So there are 3 basic ways that fungi can cause infection. You can have an allergic reaction to the fungal spores, which is probably one of the most common things. You can have fungus actually grow on or in the body. That's like your athlete's foot, ringworm, jock itch. And then you can have intoxication of the chemicals or the materials that fungi produce. So aspergillosis, causes or releases toxins into the body. And so that would be an intoxication. That would be an example of intoxication. I'm going to stop here. This has been, I know, a 15-minute video, and I apologize, but I only had a couple more slides at 10 minutes, and I didn't want to do 2 slides of fungi and then get into algae. So I'll stop here, and we'll get into our next video on algae. Okay, bye.